Hello, it's Dr. Dave. I'm back with another episode of the After Hours Clinic podcast. This is actually going to be the first part of a series on a specific topic, and that topic is weight loss in menopausal women. And how I got on this thread and why I'm starting it. I actually have a friend, a colleague of mine who is board certified in OB-GYN, and I oftentimes reach out to her for questions I have when it comes to menopausal hormone therapy for my patients, because this is very much an area of expertise and an area of passion of hers. And she actually recently got offered a job to be sort of the director of menopausal medicine at a very large institution nearby. And she had mentioned that she was interested in putting together a talk on different issues relating to menopause. And one of those topics she wanted to talk about was the topic of weight loss in menopausal women, because that's such a common issue that arises amongst menopausal women. And she was interested in getting my expertise as an obesity medicine practitioner. And I actually, the second I heard this idea, I was absolutely fascinated because, to me, this is a topic of interest, just because in my experience, treating women who are menopausal, perimenopausal for weight loss has been one of the more challenging aspects of obesity medicine. Forever, obesity medicine was basically not really even recognized as a legitimate field outside of the surgeons who performed bariatric procedures, which have been successful for decades. But prior to the release of GLP-1s, people weren't even considering talking to patients about medications for weight loss because there were so few. They had side effects. Some of them were, controlled medications, so people were afraid of addiction possibilities. And the reality is no one was treating obesity. Kind of in a similar fashion, I feel like for many years, no one was treating menopause, right? It was, the Women's Health Initiative, the studies that came out of that kind of created a false sense of fear in doctors and health media, kind of telling us there's all these dangers of putting women on hormones. And, they would say the same thing about, putting people with issues with obesity on weight loss medications. They'd say, oh, these medications are a crutch. They need to learn to, basically eat less, move more. It's actually harmful to them in the long run. And so it's funny, these are two kind of populations that have forever been neglected that come together in one. So, I think that also makes for a really fascinating topic as well, because I think it's, the levees have kind of broken. And, obviously with weight loss, everyone is trying to get their hands on GLP-1s. And now more and more doctors and patients themselves are aware of kind of the potential benefits of hormone therapies, and also kind of excited about the prospect of the unknown potential benefits as we've kind of put the risk into better perspective over time. And so as these two things come together, I think they're going to make for a fascinating topic, because I think the two will kind of become somewhat linked, because obviously hormones, like do play some role in maintaining a healthy weight. But I don't think it's something that is fully elucidated yet, meaning we don't fully know the full interplay of how the transition from being, premenopausal to menopausal, how those hormone shifts may actually impact weight loss, and also how potentially supplementing with hormones may have a role in weight loss. I just think this is such a fascinating topic. And I'm the kind of person that if someone asks me to do a talk, I will spend months preparing it, just sort of breaking it down, looking at studies that are relevant to the topic, and just sort of going down the rabbit hole. So I'm going to start basically pulling you guys down the rabbit hole with me, and kind of look at the topic of what is happening during the menopausal transition with respect to not only weight gain, but also changes in body composition. If you talk to most women who struggle with weight, who are around menopause or after menopause, they will tell you that this is a struggle. And for some of them, it's been a lifelong struggle. But I think all of them will kind of tell you that the struggle got worse around the time of menopause. You know, in general, weight loss is more challenging for women across all ages, right? Truthfully, regardless of what kind of diet propaganda you've heard, the reality is weight loss does come down to a matter of energy expenditure. You have to consume less energy in the form of calories than you expend on a daily basis. And one of the major factors that determines how much energy we expend is, our basal metabolic rate. And that is determined largely by things like your muscle mass, your age. And men have a much higher basal metabolic rate, meaning just by doing nothing, I probably burn an extra 700 calories or more than, my wife who's close to me in age. And that in and of itself makes weight loss challenging. I think what I really want to look into is, are there challenges beyond just the thermodynamic reality? Are there challenges beyond just, hey, we gain weight as we age? Because that's kind of a common theme. Most people you'll ask will tell you that they have gained weight over the years, right? Very few people are the same weight they were when they graduate high school. So there is that natural tendency to gain weight just as we age. But what I'm kind of curious, is there something that's specific about this menopausal transition that makes weight loss more challenging? And I actually found a really interesting study that kind of looks at this exact question, and I will go ahead and just chuck it up on the screen for you. Okay. So this is a little kind of summary I made of the article. The original article is called "Changes in Body Composition and Weight During the Menopause Transition." And what this is this study basically looked at a cohort of middle-aged women. It's called the SWAN study. I actually forget what SWAN stands for. What it is, it's a cohort of middle-aged women that they follow longitudinally, and they collect certain health data, and they can then sort of analyze that data to learn, to answer certain questions about aging in women. And one of the things they looked at is what happens to women's body composition as they not only they age, but as they go through the menopausal transition. And in this study, what they were doing is they were following these women and checking their body composition using a DEXA, and repeating this at multiple points, over time. And they were then comparing the changes in body transition, body composition. They were showing how it relates to the onset of menopause, which they kind of define as the last menstrual period. Um, so, which is technically, menopause is having been 1 year without a period, but I think they use this kind of the last period as sort of the transition between perimenopause and menopause. So they were looking to see how body composition changes over time, and if there are any notable changes in weight. Uh, or body composition that are specific to that transition, meaning, do we see a rapid increase in weight? Do we see a rapid increase in fat mass? And it's a pretty interesting study because it's a fairly large cohort. It's like 1,200 women, so it's not a small study, and they're using DEXA, which is for all intents and purposes, from a clinical perspective, the most accurate way to measure body composition. And so I'll go just to a graph that I think kind of explains the the overall gist of the article. What we have here on this graph here is on the y-axis, we're looking at changes in body composition. On the x-axis, we're looking at time. They specify time zero as their final menstrual period, and they're just looking at years going before and backwards, right? So if you look at the graph for body weight, which is in red here, what you see is it's kind of a linear increase with age. There, we don't really see any change in the rate of weight gain around menopause. It seems to be just kind of a steady progression. But what's interesting is if you look at the rate of increase in fat mass here on top of the black line, what you see is about a year and a half prior to and about 2 years after the last menstrual period, you see sort of a doubling in the rate of fat mass increase. So although the rate of weight increase is steady, we're seeing kind of a doubling of that rate of fat mass. At the same time, what we're seeing at that same inflection point is we see here in blue, which is lean mass. We see that the lean mass has been kind of steady in the premenopause years, and right up until about 2 years prior to the last period, until about 2 years after, you see kind of an acceleration, a decline, the beginning of a decline. I wouldn't even say an acceleration because we were steady before, but we're seeing a decline in lean mass. So we're seeing, lean mass start to decline and fat mass kind of rapidly increasing during this time, which means, overall, uh, yes, weight is increasing, but the body composition is rapidly worsening during this time of menopausal transition. And again, as you change your body composition, you lose lean mass. Obviously, that in and of itself is going to make weight loss more challenging because, as I said before, muscle mass is a large determinant of your, just your resting metabolic rate. But I think what this article says is, there does seem to be something around the time of menopause that is affecting body composition in a significant way. And I'll tell you that is a real issue that I would see in women, losing weight with GLP-1s. And I would when I was at my last kind of employed job, I would check body composition using a bioelectric impedance, which is not quite as accurate as DEXA, but pretty accurate. I would check that every 3 months in my patients to ensure that as they're losing weight, that they are also seeing a decrease in percentage of body fat, that we're seeing a preservation of lean muscle as we lose weight. And frequently in women, perimenopause, postmenopause, I would see significant weight loss, but very minimal change in body composition. What that tells me is you're losing fat mass and lean mass almost at equal rates. And, one that leads to issues of frailty because as you lose muscle mass, you're likely losing some function with it. And then also there becomes the issue of like what happens after you get off these medications, right? Because a lot of people, although the medication really is intended to be a lifelong medication, a lot of people come off it. They may not like the side effects. They may not just like taking a medication every week. Their insurances may change. If you go from commercial insurance to Medicare, which does not cover weight loss medications, all of a sudden you have to stop these. And I want to point out a little table that I kind of reference a lot when I do these. It's actually a table. I'm going to pull this up right here at the bottom and I'll kind of explain it. This is a table. It's found in like the original article, the step 1 trial that looked at, treating people with obesity with Wegovy or, with semaglutide for weight loss. And that was kind of the trial that began it all, right? That's the trial that showed us that people on Wegovy lost, roughly 15% of their body weight over a course of 68 weeks, which was absolutely, just huge at the time. Because prior to that, most medications were barely above 5%, and they weren't necessarily well tolerated. And a lot of them weren't even covered by insurance. So when we started seeing this, medication that was really successful, even approaching what we'd get from bariatric surgery, there was a lot of excitement. But one thing that I think is very important to point out is like what was happening to this population in terms of their body composition. What that study was really highlighting was the weight change, the change in weight, change in BMI. This table actually looks at changes in body composition through use of DEXA scan. And the column here that says N equals 95, that refers to 95 people that had received Wegovy. And here is N equals 45, that's the 45 that were on placebo. And, what we see is really a substantial change in fat mass up top here. With those who are on Wegovy, but we also see a really substantial decrease in total lean body mass. In fact, it's so the total change in fat mass was about 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. The total change in lean mass was a reduction of 7 kilograms, which that's around 15 pounds. That is a really substantial reduction in lean mass. Now, not all of that necessarily reflects muscle, but a large portion is. And once you've lost that muscle, it is really hard to get it back. It does require really dedicated training, proper nutrition, in some cases supplementation. And so you have to think there was a follow-up study done where they actually took people on Wegovy and switched them back to placebo, and they gained, I think, like 2/3, 3/4 of the weight they had lost back. So this kind of sets you up for this horrendous yo-yo that you could see. So imagine a woman who's in that menopausal transition, you're giving them Wegovy, they already have this sort of natural acceleration in lean muscle mass loss. And then you're adding sort of fuel to the fire by doing rapid weight loss with the GLP-1, especially if it's not done properly, which most people, to be quite honest, when they're taking GLP-1s, they're not really adhering to proper nutrition, proper exercise patterns. So I do see, potential for, particular harm in this population in light of this study that shows us that there is this change in menopause and body composition that is attributable to the menopause transition. Obviously this is one study, and it doesn't answer all of our questions, right? The study didn't look at the actual, changes in hormone levels and how they correlated to changes in body composition. So we can't, 100% say, oh, it's just the hormones that's happening here. There are, perhaps other explanations, and also interestingly, in the original study that I was referencing on changes in body composition and menopause. What's interesting as a kind of a note in this is when they looked at the population, the subpopulation of Asian women, they didn't follow the same pattern. They didn't see this increase in fat mass that white and black members of this cohort experienced. The Chinese population didn't show a decline in muscle mass associated with the menopause transition. So, it is interesting that we see such difference in these two cohorts. So there's probably more to, the story than just hormones. I think it also begs the question, and this is going to be kind of the next thing I look at, is like, what evidence do we have of hormone therapy and its role in maintaining a healthy body composition? In this particular study, they did do a sub-analysis of women who were on hormone therapy and showed that it did not affect changes in body composition. However, in this cohort, all the women were started on hormone therapy after menopause. So there's none that were started kind of in the perimenopause transition. So that would be kind of interesting to see if there's a potential role in starting hormone therapies. If there are any studies out there that have looked at, starting hormone therapy in the perimenopause period to see if we can blunt that negative effect on body composition. So that's kind of where I'm going to be going down the rabbit hole next, because obviously that's the next logical question that follows from this. And with that, I'm also kind of interested in looking at data on appropriate protein supplementation in aging and also in postmenopausal, in menopausal women and women in the menopause transition. And also things like supplementation with creatine. These are all kind of interesting topics that I think are really germane as we look at the topic of approaching weight loss in women who are in the menopause transition. So I hope you found this interesting as I did. I hope you're interested in the questions that come after. And if you have any questions, please just leave them in the comments. I would love to. I love reading questions just because it stimulates my mind. It makes me kind of go down new directions, and I think it really helps me grow as a doctor. So, thanks for coming along this journey with me, and I look forward to doing this with you in the near future.